I'm Rob Capra. I'm a postdoc fellow here at the University of North Carolina School of Information and Library Science. And today I'm going to be talking about JavaScript and the document object model. So let's get started. So first off, I want to give a brief example to describe what the document object model is. And we don't have a lot of time to go through this today, so we're going to hit the high points. But I have a short example that's just a simple HTML document. So you've got an HTML tag and a header with a title. Then you start some body where there's a header and a second level header. And then a simple table with one row and another row with a couple data elements. So this should be familiar to you. Let me go ahead and pull this up in Firefox and show you what that would look like. So this is our Chaucer DOM.html, and so here is what we would get from this, and this should be familiar. It's just a very simple table with the first few lines from the general prologue of Chaucer. So the question here is, how does this get translated into a document object model? When the browser looks at this page and treats it as a DOM, or a document object model, what does this look like? So I'm going to show you on the next slide a tree representation of what this looks like. First, we start off with the HTML node that's at the top. So we're modeling the entire document as the HTML node. And then we have two things at the same level. We've got a head, which is here, and a body, which is here. So those are at the topmost level. And then as a child off the head is our title, and then there's some text there, the Chaucer DOM example. Okay, so here's the title tag, and then for the text, we'll treat that as the node. Same idea for the body. We have the body tag here, and then below that, directly below, we've got the heading 1 tag with the text Canterbury Tales, and the heading 2 tag with the by Geoffrey Chaucer. Then also at that level is this table. Now, the table then has what's called a table body. You don't actually see that in the HTML, but it's there and modeled as part of the document. So the table body comes in, and both of these table rows are children of the table body. So we have two table rows. They each have two table data elements. This one has Juan met April with the Shura Sota, and this one has the Druth of March hath perced to the Rota. And so we have both those here, and I ran out of room, but that's where the text would go. Okay? Now, just so you know that I'm not making this up, and that I didn't just draw a pretty picture, you can always look at the document object model for any document using something called the DOM inspector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Mozilla, and this is also in Firefox too. You can get to it in both browsers, but unfortunately on this machine it wasn't installed on the Firefox browser, so I'll get to it through Mozilla. And if you go into the tools, you can go to web development, and there's a tool called the DOM inspector. And what that allows you to do is pull up any web page and see the DOM tree for that page. So if we pull that up, and then I copied this URL of the page that we were looking at. Oops. Easier said than done. Triple click, right? Copy, paste. And then I hit this inspect button. What I now have is the same page is being displayed here in the bottom part, so we know we're on the right page. And off to the side over here, we now get to see in this area the DOM tree. So let me pull up my slide in the background so that we can see these both at the same time, and you can check me on this. So starting at the top, we've got HTML. Okay, so here's the top level HTML node. And if I expand that, we have a head and a body. Okay, so far so good. If I expand the head, we have a title. Okay, so that's all there is for that. For the body node, if I expand that, we have an H1, an H2, and a table. So here's an H1, an H2, and a table. Now these extra little text elements that are there, those are just the spacing text that's in the HTML. So you don't have to really worry about that. Those are just little line breaks and things like that. So let's check the H1. Now H1 has some text associated with it, and there's a neat thing you can do in this DOM inspector. If I click on a tag here on the side, or a DOM node, it will highlight, I think I just did it a minute ago, there you go. So it will highlight that part of the document so you can see and make sure that that's the one you were wanting to get to. I can also click on the text element for that, and if you see over here, it now displays that node in the tree. And so the title there, I'm sorry, the H1 tag is the Canterbury Tales. So using this tool is a real handy way to get a view of what the document object model is for a particular document. So you can see we have the table body. The table body has 1, 2 table rows. Table row has 2 data elements. We can click on that, and there's our first data element. You click on the text, and that's the command April, and you could go on through that way. Okay, so the DOM inspector is a very valuable and important tool to use when you have to deal with the DOM. Now, given that we sort of understand a little more about the structure of this document, there's a question, what can we do with that, and how does that relate to JavaScript? Because this is supposed to be a talk about JavaScript and the DOM. So now let me give you a quick little introduction to JavaScript, and this is by no means comprehensive, but it'll kind of get our toes wet. JavaScript, you simply define by using a script tag in HTML, and you can give it the type text JavaScript, and the browsers will recognize that and know what to do with it. And in this example, we're simply defining a function called hello that takes one argument x, and then takes that argument and creates an alert box with it. So let me turn off the underlining here so that we can see this a little better. You guys know how to turn off the underlining? Somebody showed me how to do this. Well, we'll leave it on for now. All right, so that is defined in the header of the document. Then in the body of the document, in this example, we just have a simple form with a button. The button will say hello world, and when you click it, the on-click event will happen, and that on-click event will call this hello function with the string hello world. And so it passes hello world to the function, and an alert text box will pop up with that message. So let me show you that in Firefox. So this is the hello world. Okay. No, this is the simple example. Okay. So here's the hello world button. It's a very simple form, right? It has no other adornments to it. Just has this one submit button. So we hit the button, and up pops an alert box with the string hello world. So we're going to use this same kind of idea to create a couple additional functions, and we're going to then use this to start manipulating the document object model as well. Because all the components in a form and all the components on a web page can be addressed by the document object model. So before we talk about that, we need to talk about how you can get at these elements in the document object model from JavaScript. How do you talk about those DOM nodes from within JavaScript? And there are two very popular ways of doing this. The first one is kind of a dot notation addressing, that if you're familiar with how any operating system or file system deals with files, this will be kind of familiar. But you start at the top of the document and you put a dot, and then you put a name of one of the elements that you're trying to talk about. And so Fred is a child of document, left is a child of Fred, and so on. And so you get to a point where that refers to a particular object in the DOM. And once you've finished with the object, you can then add another dot and start referring to properties of that object. And one of the important properties is the value. So if we set the value of something, that's saying, okay, we want this object to now have the value hello. So if it were a text box, it would put the string hello into that text box for us. The other way that's commonly used is to use what's called getElementById. And in this method, you refer to an element by the ID that was given to it in the HTML. And I'll show you an example of both of these in a minute. But you can pass in the string of the ID, and then it will find it, and you can do the same thing. You can set the value to whatever that string is that you want. So let's look at a concrete example of this. So here's where we're going to use the DOM and JavaScript together, and we're going to use those two addressing schemes together. So let me first show you what the example does, and then we'll look at the code. So this is the Hello World example that I was trying to pull up a minute ago. Okay, so this is a form that has two text boxes. So there's a left text box and a right text box, and there's a button that says click me. And if I click the click me button, it's going to put hello in this box and world in that box. So let's try that out. Okay, so hello and world. So how did this work? Well, it's pretty straightforward. We do the same kind of thing we did before, where we have a form that has a button, and the button has this value, click me, and on click, it calls this hello function. Now, in this case, we're not going to pass any string to it. We're just going to call the function and let the function fill in the values. So the function hello uses the addressing schemes that we talked about to access those two text boxes in the DOM and set them to hello and world. So let's kind of take a harder look at that. Document Fred left value. So what are we talking about there? Well, document is a keyword that's used to refer to everything in the current document. So that's sort of our root level node for this document. This file, when loaded, we can talk about the whole thing by referring to document. Now, within that, Fred, we scan through here, and oh look, this form is named Fred. So the name field that is given to this form, so this is an attribute, an HTML attribute that the DOM is understanding as a way to refer to that form field. So when I say document Fred, I'm talking about this form. Then, when I say left, I go here and say, look, I have an input field that has name left. I also have one that has name right. So if I refer to left here, I'm talking about this one. If I refer to right, I'm talking about the other one. So this part up on this side is referring to that particular object in the DOM. Then this part, the value, is a property of that object that I'm going to set. And by setting the value to hello, that causes the text hello to appear in that text box. So that was the first addressing scheme that we talked about. Now, the second one was the getElementById. So in this case, I say, okay, I want to talk about the current document, and I'm looking for an element with ID 2. And if you look down here, this has name right, but it also has ID 2. And so it scans the entire document and it finds an element that has the ID of 2. And then again, I can do the same thing. I can just say, take that object in the DOM and assign its value the string hello or world. And so that would then set the other one. So when I click the click me, it's calling the function hello that's then setting these two values of these two fields. All right. Now, let's see, let's kind of take this a step farther. And I actually want to show you another example. It's very similar, except here we are we're we're going to actually create a little calculator within the JavaScript. So this is entirely on the client side. Nothing happens to communicate back with the server. This is all on the client side. So let's see, where did my window go? So we have a simple form here that has 3 fields, a left, a right, and a result. And it has a button in the middle that's a plus sign. So if I type a number here and a number here and hit the plus sign, the result will appear here. So let me try that. If I add 3 and 4 together, I should get 7. Okay. So the way this works, very, very similar to what we did with the last one. We know how to address, we know how to get at all of these fields in the form by their names or by their IDs. So here we have a button with the value plus, so it just displays the string plus. Nothing magic about that. I could have it be add or subtract or whatever. And when you click on that button, it calls the add function. The add function goes and looks for the left value and the right value. So again, down here we have the text field with left and the text field with right. That's this one and this one. It takes those 2 values, adds them together, and sets the result field with that value. And so the result is down here. Now, there's one piece of trickiness that we do in there, and that is that whatever values are typed into left and right, we have to treat those as numbers. So we call a function in JavaScript called parseFloat that just takes a string and converts that string to a floating point number so that we can actually add them together. And JavaScript has a lot of these kinds of functions that you can look up in reference texts, but this is just a simple way you can do this. So without a whole lot of code, I mean this is maybe 10-15 lines of code, we can create a very, very simple client-side calculator. And you can imagine doing a lot more than that, adding more functions, more operations. Okay, so this is how you could create a very simple calculator in JavaScript. So I hope what you've seen here today is just a real short introduction to both how the document object model works and how you can access it from within JavaScript to do a few very simple things. But I also hope that in seeing the simplicity of it, it's very easy to do, and you can create much more robust applications with some very, very simple techniques like this. Thanks.